Vietnam and Sweden have joined hands to build what can be seen as a unique relation. In 2014, the two countries have been celebrating their 45th anniversary of diplomatic ties. So on this occasion, we are so honored to be joined by Ms. Camila Mellander, the Swedish ambassador to Vietnam, who will provide you a very profound and comprehensive understanding about the two countries' relation.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel very honored, and I must say I'm enjoying my time here as the Swedish ambassador in Vietnam very much. Vietnam is a wonderful country.
First of all, thank you so much for joining our program today. People said that Vietnam and Sweden has developed a very unique relation in the past 45 years. What can you say about this relation, and what are the biggest achievements between the two country cooperation?
Well, Sweden was the first Western country to establish diplomatic relations with Vietnam already in 1969, when there was still a war going on. And this relationship is very unique. It's a very, very deep and trustful relationship that we have developed over the years. After 46 years of Swedish development cooperation, we're now moving into a new phase where we put emphasis on economic and trade ties, and we're moving from a donor-recipient relationship to an equal partnership. And as you just said, this year marks the 45th anniversary of our bilateral relations, and we are celebrating this year with one event per month. It's not only on business, but also on culture, music, film, design, and education. And we're very happy to see that a lot of young Vietnamese students have been participating in these events. We hope that you will be a very active participant in the remaining part of the year.
Sure. Actually, I have a look on your website already, and I can see a large number of followers on your Facebook.
Yes.
There are many factors contributing to enhancing the Vietnam and Sweden relation, and one of them is the conclusion of the Vietnam and EU FTA in the near future, and some people say that it may end by the end of this year. And what are the potential impacts of the trade pact on Vietnam and Sweden relation, especially in trade and economy?
Well, let me first say that as the Swedish ambassador to Vietnam, I'm very, very happy to see that the European Union and Vietnam are moving closer to each other, not only in the political field, but also in the economic field. And we saw that Party General Secretary Chong met with European Commissioner President Gian Manuel Barroso in 2013, and there have been a number of high-level visits. And that shows the commitment from the European side of concluding the free trade agreement within 2014. And I know also on the Vietnamese side there's a very strong commitment to concluding this agreement. And when we are in the final phases of the negotiations, and this means not only market opening commitments, but also other related ones like investment, environment, competition, sustainable development, and so forth. And I think the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement will have a great impact on the Vietnamese economy. We've seen that other free trade agreements that the European Union have concluded with other partners, such as South Korea, for example, has expanded the trade by 30%. So I think there's a huge potential there for Vietnamese businesses, but also for European businesses.
And Swedish companies in particular.
And in Swedish companies in particular. And Sweden is a strong believer in free trade, and Swedish companies have always been trading outside of Sweden. We've been very successful in international trade. For sure we'll take advantage of the free trade agreement once it's concluded between the European Union and Vietnam.
Yeah, the bilateral trade between the two countries has developed an average of 28% per year in the past 3 years and reached more than $1 billion in 2013. And what should we do to increase the value to a higher level?
Well, the Swedish government's goal is to double trade with Vietnam. And I think what Sweden can do now is to contribute to Vietnam's economic development by increased trade ties, exchange of business solutions, and transfer of technology. And already now we have more than 70 companies that are established in Vietnam, and we have a lot of the big multinational companies already established in Vietnam since a long time back. We have, for example, Tetra Pak, Electrolux, IKEA, SKF, ABB, Atlas Copco, but of course we would like to attract more. In the last 12 months, I can say we've had a surge in visits on the Swedish side, but also on the Vietnamese side. We had our Minister of Justice, Beatrice Ask, visiting. We had Gunnar Ohm, State Secretary for Trade, and we had our Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Frank Belfrage. Just recently, we had an outgoing visit from Vietnam, Deputy Prime Minister Ninh going to Sweden with a big delegation. So this is also, of course, facilitating economic cooperation between our countries.
As you said, 70 Swedish companies has made their presence in Vietnam at the moment. But what should we do to encourage more Swedish companies to come here and tap the potential market in Vietnam?
Well, I think there is a huge potential in the area of green technology, for example. And in Sweden, we've been working with green technological solutions for about 30 years. Of course, we understand that we have to work sustainably. I think here there's a huge potential for Swedish companies to invest in the Vietnamese market.
A very important part of our relation is Sweden has supported Vietnam an ODA of $3 billion, which has helped Vietnam a lot in poverty reduction and socio-economic development. What is your plan for this ODA for Vietnam in the coming time?
It's been remarkable to follow Vietnam's developments from a lower income country into a middle income country. I mean, there's been a remarkable progress in growth and reduction of poverty. And now we are phasing out our bilateral development cooperation. But we are still one of the major donors to Vietnam through multilateral organizations, because Sweden is one of the major donors to the UN, to ADB, and to the World Bank.
I see.
So we are still funding a lot of the infrastructural developments that are being made in Vietnam, but now through multilateral forums. And on top of that, we are, of course, part of the European Union. And the European Union is the largest donor to Vietnam of non-refundable ODA. So while we are changing our bilateral relationship when it comes to development cooperation, we are still one of the major players, but through other fora.
I see. Right, and hopefully Vietnam and Sweden will develop a very fruitful cooperation in the future. Once again, thank you so much for joining our program today. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.